Stop it.
The CEO's wife, Mrs. Rachel, slammed the traditional sweets I had brought onto the floor. She breathed heavily, and her expression, which made her anger apparent, was intimidating. I'm sorry. The sweets scattered on the floor. The recipe I learned from my grandmother, who was skilled in making sweets, was something I could replicate very well. I felt miserable. I started preparing it several days ago and working hard to make it for the celebration of the chairwoman's longevity.
Do you really think my mill would eat such cheap sweets?
Tears overflowed in response to the words that were directed at me. What a nuisance, added the CEO, Mr. Robert. My mom is not in good health, and yet, he clicked his tongue in disapproval. I'm really sorry. When I looked up, I saw the chairwoman, Mrs. Cynthia, staring back at me with tears in her eyes. My name is Chelsea Smith. I'm 38 years old. It is embarrassing to say, but I'm still single, and I haven't had much experience with men. Reflecting back, I've had a few men who cared for me, but I just couldn't move out of my house. I loved my grandmother dearly and didn't want to be away from her. So, as relationships progress, the conversation would lead to the possibility of living with my grandmother, right? But as soon as that topic came up, the men I dated always run away. Huh! What about my parents? My parents passed away in a car accident when I was very young. I was in early elementary school at the time. Then, I started living with my grandparents. I had everything I needed and was very happy. Well, stories of protagonists who suffer from mean grandparents would be more exciting, I guess. I'm sorry. I led a mundane life. Perfectly ordinary, without any particular hardship. Losing my parents was extremely sad, though. Thanks to my grandparents who dealt with me seriously, I think I was able to recover at an early stage. The story I'm about to tell happened at the chairwoman's longevity celebration. Mrs. Cynthia, the chairwoman, started living with her son and daughter-in-law, the current CEO, after her husband, the previous CEO, collapsed from a heart attack. The sudden collapse of the CEO had a significant impact on the company, and Robert, who was not only his son but also an employee, had a hard time taking over. Ever since her husband's death, the once cheerful Cynthia's face lost its smile, and she started to visibly weaken. So it became the job of the CEO's wife, Rachel, to follow in Cynthia's footsteps. What happened then? Ever since she lost her husband and her job, Cynthia had been sinking into depression. I often saw Cynthia, frail and weakening, in the neighborhood and hesitated to approach her. I didn't really have anything appropriate to talk about. I'm very unsociable, and it took a long time to get along with people in the same department. Even more so with the chairman's wife. It would be rude to speak casually. There's also a rumor in the office that Rachel is obsessed with organic food, that her meals are simple and unbalanced. It seems she's quite particular about her own lunches. If you were caught eating something like instant noodles within Rachel's sight, she'd get very upset. With such concerns, the rumors about the chairwoman were circulating among the employees along with voices of worry. A longevity celebration, is that correct? I had been called by Miss Rachel to discuss something. It was about inviting Miss Cynthia to our office next Thursday for a party.
Let's go all out and celebrate, even get catering. And to spread the word among all employees, please handle the printouts and emails,
Rachel said. Do you want me to take care of the venue decorations and the catering arrangements? I asked. Oh no, that's fine. A friend of mine will take care of it. Her restaurant is really good. Rachel showed me a page from a magazine featuring a chic cafe.
This place is also vegan.
Vegan?
That means they don't use any animal-derived products.
Really? No matter how many times I read the explanation, I couldn't quite grasp it. But when I heard her saying we don't eat any meat or fish, I felt a sense of terror realizing that Miss Rachel was involved with something unimaginable. I wondered if Cynthia would be okay. I know that having biased opinions isn't good, especially as an adult. But we've been eating these things for so long, if they were suddenly taken away from us, wouldn't it upset the balance inside our bodies? No, veganism does exist, so I guess you could survive. It seems there is always a world unknown to me, no matter how old I get. Despite my anxiety about Rachel's long life celebration, I went on with my work. The next day, I posted the long life celebration announcement on the notice boards on each floor, and then sent out an email to all employees. Being in the General Affairs Department, which also doubles as a jack of all trades, a task or two like this was a piece of cake. Are you going to bring anything to celebration? My colleague, John, asked, and I found the piece that had slipped out of my mind. I'll play it safe with a handkerchief, said John, pouting his lips. I have to go to the department store over the weekend. He seemed a little reluctant. As for me, in a company mostly comprising women, I felt like they received many small gifts. I don't want to give the same gift as others do. I racked my brain for a good idea and decided to make traditional sweets my grandmother taught me. She didn't own a shop, but she had a fair number of fans who loved her traditional sweets, and many people came to her house just to get them. My grandmother, who was good with hands, was not only good at making traditional sweets, but also knitting, embroidery, and was truly admirable. I was rather clumsy, but still, I loved making traditional sweets with my grandmother on weekends. Brewing and drinking tea with my grandparents after the meticulous work of making the traditional sweets. Even now, when I think back on it, it's the warmest memory. When I got home from work and before I started cooking, I pulled out a notebook where I compiled the recipes my grandmother taught me. Which one would be good for Cynthia? Since it's summer, something refreshing would be nice. With every turn of the page, my clumsy handwriting and the illustrations of the completed sweets drawn by my grandmother tugged at my hot strings. Oh, I miss Grandma. My grandmother was very kind. Even when I couldn't do the decorations well, she patiently taught me. She sincerely engaged with everything I wanted to do until I was satisfied. The next day, I finished work early, so I went to a grocery store to get the ingredients for the traditional sweets and made a prototype. I did a better job than I expected, and I couldn't wait for the day to give it to Cynthia. The celebration party started on time, and Cynthia, the guest of honor, was brought on stage, and Rachel gave the opening speech. As I gazed at the catering, a few of the female employees muttered complaints.
I wanted to eat meat.
While it was popular with the women, the men seemed unsatisfied. Still, several male employees piled up their plates saying, "It seems healthy." Soon after, it naturally transitioned to giving presents to Cynthia. Looking at the line, it seemed about 40% had brought something. Cynthia opened the gifts in front of everyone and thanked each one personally. This is something my grandmother taught me, I said nervously as I handed over the traditional sweets, and Cynthia's fluffy white hair bounced happily.
Hey, what is this?
But it seemed Rachel was different. She snatched the box of traditional sweets from Cynthia and threw it on the floor. Everyone was baffled at first, but when a bystander nearby let out a small scream, all attention was drawn to the scene.
Don't give her such a thing. Stop it.
I just stared at the sweets scattered on the floor.
How could you let my mother eat this?
Robert, who had heard the commotion, rushed over.
What happened?
She was giving your mother traditional sweets. Homemade ones.
Homemade? There's no way my mother would eat such commoner sweets. Robert laughed. I crouched down, starting to pick up the sweets, muttering I'm sorry. Cynthia was the one who raised her voice. You people. She crouched next to me and began scooping up the bean paste that had fallen to the floor. Mill, this is disgraceful. Please stop. Rachel tried to help Cynthia up, grabbing her arm.
Please stop. Enough is enough.
Cynthia's words made Robert and Rachel turn pale as they tried to soothe her.
What's happening? Why are you all shouting like that?
This young woman's grandma's my dear friend. She saved my life. And you treat the traditional sweets she left behind like this.
Tears streamed down Cynthia's cheeks as she shouted. Rachel, holding onto Cynthia's arm, tried to calm her down. Mill, please calm down. Okay. But Cynthia shook off her hand vigorously, saying, let go of me.
I'm old, and I've put up with a lot because I'm relying on you guys, but I've reached my limit. I will do what I want.
Mom, calm down, okay? I'm sorry about the sweets, okay?
It's not so simple to forgive.
Cynthia remained resolute. Then Cynthia went back on the stage and switched on the microphone.
I'm not rejecting healthy meals like the catering my daughter prepared today, but I declare, I'll eat what I want, and I'll drink what I want. I'll do whatever I want. Just because I'm getting on in years doesn't mean I should live a dull life. My life should always be exciting and adventurous. That's how I want to live.
When Cynthia finished, she breathed heavily, and the scattered applause gradually grew louder.
I apologize once again.
After the party, she called out to me as I was about to leave.
The traditional sweets you gave me was treated like that. I finally managed to express my feelings. Thank you.
I didn't do anything. Cynthia held the damaged box that held the sweets tightly.
The moment I saw this, I thought it was like what Emily used to give me as a gift. Emily was always on my side. Whenever I was going through a tough time, Emily would always make me traditional sweets. You have no idea how much it supported me. This time too, Emily and you gave me courage.
I had no idea you and my grandma were close. Cynthia smiled gently. Please make the sweets a guy, she asked me, her eyes welling up with tears. I sat in front of the home altar, reporting the events of the day. Why didn't you tell me you were friends with Cynthia? I was very surprised. Apparently, Cynthia kept it a secret because she thought I might act overly formal if I knew we were acquainted. Besides, you're very diligent and thoughtful. If you knew Emily and I were friends, you might think you got the job because of connections, not your abilities. Cynthia had laughed. True. Now I can handle my job, knowing their relationship doesn't bother me. But if I had known that when I still made a lot of mistakes and had to learn the ropes, I might have been overwhelmed by feelings of self-blame, thinking that I caused trouble for the company by getting in through connections and possibly being crushed by guilt. Life works in mysterious ways. Grandma, I think I'm going to try making traditional sweets again. I was excited to make them after a long time. Maybe one day I'll make some that I come up with myself. I wonder if Cynthia would like it. The recipe book, handed down from my grandmother, looked well used, the cover worn and weathered, seeming to reflect the years it had seen. Please keep watching over me, everyone. It's okay. I'm doing fine. Don't worry. After finishing telling today's event with a smile, I headed to the kitchen to start making snacks. I'm still thirsty, so I'm gonna drink a beer in the fridge. I'm off tomorrow. I can finally kick back and relax to my heart's content. I'll try making some prototype of new sweets. Looks like it's been a while since I've had a lazy weekend coming up.